Well, you know, I saw a commercial on television just last week for something called NYSE, which was N-Y-S-E. I always thought that was New York Stock Exchange. I'm sure that's not what it stands for. I never did figure out what it was. Anyway, you can get these cards, these NYSE cards, that you take to this supermarket in New York State, and it is an actual debit card. You have this card, you take it in, you give it to the cashier, they run up your grocery bill, put in the card, and it automatically takes the money out of your bank account. Now, I just saw this myself a week ago, so maybe this ad has been running for a while and I just hadn't seen that channel, but...
There are tests running all over North America now, in Canada and the United States, actual debit card system. And just to explain very briefly, a debit card system, you use it just like your credit card, except that machine is electronically hooked up to your bank. And so the minute you give them that card, it electronically goes into your bank account and moves it into the store's bank account. It's the wave of the future, and it's where we're going. Let me just say, this video that you're watching is a sequel to a blockbuster video, really, from a few years ago called Marck of the Beast. And so we went into all the details of how the cashless society worked there, so it might be a good idea to watch that in conjunction with this, because there is overlap in the two areas, but really these are completely different things that we're talking about and setting our focus on.
There's no question that the greatest obstacle to electronic banking systems today is security. The fact of the matter is that card fraud is literally out of control.
The UK card industry is suffering from heavy card fraud. Fraud in the UK is quite a major business.
Bob Carter is the president of Orchard International and an expert in biometric technology.
It's got to the situation where government ministers are talking about it, the media are talking about it, and even newspapers are talking about it.
But according to Robert Townend of Barclays Bank in the UK, Britain is not the only nation facing this crisis.
Fraud has often been cited as a business reason to look at a new technology. It's not just in the UK or Singapore, but it's a global problem, card fraud. What we see is smart cards as one tool that is being examined.
Just what is a smart card, and what is it that makes it smart? And how does it differ from other types of plastic cards?
Basically, there are three kinds of technologies. There's a magnetic card, which is like our credit card. We have optical or laser cards, which are used in telephones, such as in the United Kingdom, and integrated circuit or smart cards, which are cards that have a brain inside them.
The basic difference among these competing technologies has to do with the amount of data that they can store. And in today's information age, more is always better. That's why the smart card is the hands-on favorite for becoming the dominant technology in the days ahead.
Now smart cards are actual small microcomputers with operating systems, development language, interchange commands, and even having their own databases inside them.
But what can all this power do? How can it help to prevent against the rampant card fraud we've just examined? Well, the answer is twofold. First, the microchip that is contained in the card is virtually counterfeit-proof, and it's almost impossible to access for computer hackers. In fact, in France, where almost 100% of the bank cards are now smart cards, a recent report shows a 22% drop in bank card fraud. Compare this to Visa and MasterCard, who report continually growing losses, and who now reveal that they lost $1 billion in card fraud in 1991 alone. But even this does not do justice to the true power of the smart card. That power is found in the card's ability to positively link the card to its owner. In other words, to make sure the person using the card is the rightful owner of that card. Today's personal identification number-based system is woefully inadequate. It simply requires the cardholder to punch in a secret code when using his or her card. The problem with this system is that it fails to take into account the aged and mentally handicapped who can't remember their numbers. It doesn't protect against a criminal who steals the card and demands to be told the number. And most importantly, it does not protect against human carelessness. A Federal Reserve study done several years ago found that the majority of people actually wrote their PIN numbers right on the card, so they wouldn't lose it, totally defeating the system. If we're going to go to a totally cashless society, the system must be tightened. It must be made completely foolproof, and that is where the power of the smart card comes in.
Smart cards alone won't stop fraud, we know that.
The response by the banks to the government even suggested in the longer term they believed that biometrics offered the only real solution.
If you can do a biometric comparison of the card, that's something that has tremendous amount of value. You can have a true possession-based handshake to the card.
We're talking about the fact that the smart card's great power lies in the ability for a system to be developed where that card can tell you, I am the card of this man who is standing here. Now, we're going to talk about how that's going to happen in a few minutes. It's through something that is known as biometrics, comparing who you are as a human being, some physical characteristic, whether it's a fingerprint or an eye scan or a hand scan. That is done. You do that, you put in your hand for a hand scan, for example, the card stores it and remembers that, so the next time you go to use your card, you have to put your hand in again, and it compares the two. So it makes sure that someone has not stolen your card. So this is the power of a smart card, that it has the storage capability to do this. But as we said in the report, in an electronic age, in an information society, information is king. More is always better. And the fact of the matter is, these smart cards can store a phenomenal amount of information.
Well, and what they're trying to do is work on methods of biometrics, and we'll get into this later, that use less storage capacity. Storing a fingerprint, for example, takes a lot more than, say, storing the shape of your hand. But they are definitely, the trend in technology today is definitely moving toward biometrics, because those are the simplest ways of identifying people electronically. Because biometric is from the root bio, meaning body, and metric, meaning to measure. Meaning metric, yeah. So biometric means that they're measuring something on the body. Right. And that's one of the things we've talked about.
Well, and we're going to have some displays of this in just a few minutes. But the thing I want to sort of jump ahead of ourselves here a bit, if I can, we mentioned that there are three kinds of technology that are being really observed today. There is the magnetic strip, which is like the back you see on your credit card. There's a black magnetic strip there. They can't store very much information, so it's sort of the technology of the day gone by. There's not really a lot of room to store, other than a few account numbers and so on. There's just not the data storage capacity. Then there's the optical card, which the storage area is really the whole body of the card. It's an optical laser beam read card. But then there's the smart card, which has this microchip in it, and we've already heard it's a miniature computer right in there, storing all kinds of data.
Well, the microchip is really the breakthrough, and when we get to microchip, that's from the root micro, meaning small, and chip, meaning little plastic thing. And when you look at these microchips, these are incredibly small. They're like the lead off a pencil.
We'll look at those in a few minutes.
And yet their data storage capacity is absolutely astronomical, the amount of data they can stuff into these things. And the thing is that every passing day, they seem to be able to stuff a little bit more into a smaller and smaller space. So probably by the time we have smart cards in everybody's wallet, which could be very soon, these things will hold even far more than we're going to discuss that they do now.
A great amount of data. You'll remember that one of the personal computers that first came out when PCs became the big thing was the Commodore 64. And of course, the 64 referred to the amount of memory that it had, correct? The processing power of the machine.
64K.
The next step they're talking about in smart cards is 64K smart cards. So now you got a little card this big that can do more than the PCs that just came out. You know, they call PCs that came out at that generation the world's youngest antiques. And it's really true. They have no value today because the technology has come along so far. And smart cards, when you start to think about the idea of them implementing these on a global level, which is what they're talking about doing right now, when that kind of research and development goes into it, it'll be unbelievable what can be done on these cards. Let's also remember, I'll just give you a little foretaste here. This is a Bible prophecy video, not just a banking video. And the scripture says that the Antichrist receiveth all to receive a mark in their right. Okay, I'm sorry. To receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Now, we don't want to get into the semantics too much here, but the fact of the matter is that chip on the smart card is the only thing that's of value on that card. That piece of plastic that chip is glued to is just a handy carrying case. You could take that chip right out of the card, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get going here.
And something we've talked about a little bit too is the need to make people comfortable and to make this transition so that people are comfortable. That's why it's a card and not some other. Maybe there would be some other more convenient thing. Have it stored in a pen or a pencil or something like that. The fact that they've got it stored in a card is to help people be more comfortable.
Become acclimated.
Because they're already used to having cards. I mean, look at all the years it took to get people comfortable with credit cards. And for a long time, nobody even wanted to have a credit card. Now they're talking about, I don't know, the average American has his credit card right up to the limit or something.
Yeah, 2 out of 3.
That's right. So what they're doing is trying to make this comfortable and make the transition as smooth as possible.
It's phenomenal, but definitely the thing to keep the eye on, the horse to bet on here, if you will, is the smart card. This is where the technology is going. When we attended this conference, let me take a second and go on about this conference for a second, because you're about to see some clips from it. It was called Solutions for the Global Frontier. And This Week in Bible Prophecy felt that because it was our mission, we don't want to just be a Bible prophecy teacher. There are many good teachers, but we want to be a documenter. We believe God has called us to be a documenter of what is taking place in this generation, so you can sit down and say, there it is happening right there in front of my eyes. Here's what the Bible says. So we sent the crews down to Washington, D.C., and the clips you have seen already in this production, the clips you're going to see upcoming, several of them are from that conference. And the feeling you are going to get from these people is, cash is gone, the smart card is coming, and we need to somehow link those transactions to the individual characteristics of a person, biometrics like we're talking about. Watch these very carefully, because these are not Bible prophecy people talking to you. These are the leaders in the banking industry.
Biometrics, according to researchers, is a technology whose time has come. By making sure that we check a person's identity by physical characteristics which cannot be changed. Instead of simply accepting some form of paper ID, we can, according to industry insiders, virtually eliminate fraud and access to restricted areas. And make no mistake about it, in an information society with billions of dollars only a few keystrokes away, biometrics are here to stay.
Although biometrics have been researched for many, many years, it is only latterly that the industry has received much encouragement. This year, for example, we have seen a mass use of the fingerprint technology at the Expo 92 in Seville. It proved that fingerprint technology can be used by people and is willing to be used by people.
In the United States, a consortium of over 60 government agencies has just been formed to look into biometric technologies.
The Biometric Authentication Consortium is intended to serve as a government focal point for research, development, test, evaluation, and application of biometric-based personal identification and authentication technologies.
Jerry Webster of the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service says, however, that even as large as a 60-agency effort is, this is still something much larger.
But we're looking new technology. In fact, the U.S., Canada, Britain, Australia have a task of putting together a new technologies paper for our next meeting in Montreal in July. Some of the things we have in there are the broader use of biometrics. And do we share, how much do we share these biometrics internationally?
Let's take a few moments now to look at some of the biometric systems being used to verify the identity of people. To do that, here is our This Week in Bible Prophecy reporter, Sue Rogers, on the floor of the CardTech Secure Tech Conference in Washington, D.C.
We're speaking with Bill Alsbrooks from Information Spectrum, Inc., and he is going to explain to us some of the applications of verifying ID in moderate to high security systems.
Right. Okay, what we have here is a system that we use a fingerprint as a personal identification number, and we put that fingerprint on an integrated circuit chip card, so-called smart card. Then we can use that then to verify positive ID or to allow entrance into the moderate or high security areas. So the way we would do this is to enroll you. And I would ask you to put your fingerprint on the device here. Okay, and when I do this, I now am taking 3 pictures of your finger with a charge-coupled device camera. It will then do a mathematical transformation on that. You will see it is successful. If you'll leave your finger there, we'll verify that. It has done that. At this point in time, we would take your photo. And now at this point in time, I am writing the fingerprint to the smart card. I am writing the picture, the fingerprint template, and the information that I recorded about you out onto this erasable optical drive. It's a 128 megabyte erasable optical drive. Now I have done that. Now let's say I want to verify who you are. I'll ask you to put your finger back on there.